If there was ever a moment for Mirai to believe someone has to die, it has to be the professor in this moment right here. Even though they don't know he is planning to kill them all, and as we get the confirmation in this episode that even if it's like a fraction off, I mean, even if they all die, one of them's going to become God, except in the very specific testing of 0.15 seconds. As long as that is within that range, they would actually stay dead. So if it's 0.16, like, they would become God. And the idea of him not wanting a creature to be born is fascinating as hell. But for Mirai, I think it would be a lot different if the general world, if it was like 99.9% of people didn't believe in God, and the fact that they were willing to kill just to keep their happiness afloat. There might be an argument to be made that Mirai is maybe going against what his character has shown up until this point. But the fact that there is still 10% of people in the world, that's a lot of people who believe in God and need God, and the fact that the candidate's happiness also is something that matters, it makes a lot of sense. And knowing, either he shoots white arrows or this or that, ultimately it's going to fuel even more that someone needs to die. And if we actually see Mirai shoot a white arrow, not a red arrow, that would be pretty damn incredible to see for his character arc. But the idea of the testing and the limitations of how God is selected is so fascinating. When you really strip down Platinum End, we literally started with 2 types of arrows and wings, and someone's going to become God. That should have been boring, that should have been stale, and it should have lost its originality far, far sooner. And the fact that at episode 21 out of 24, we're still learning more about the selection process, how the arrows work, that's a flex of an author who knows what he's doing, and no Reddit thread's going to prove it otherwise. I really enjoy seeing that brutal suicide scene, because even before knowing the full reasons behind it, this man isn't simply just killing people for the sake of it. There has to be a professor, scientist reason for doing so. And the fact that he took a bunch of suicidal people to test what would happen if person A shoots person B, but then person B gets killed, or person A gets killed first, what would happen? And the fact that it all boils down to some math. So the whole idea is to kill all the candidates but 2. And with those 2, we basically shoot each other at the exact right moment, and as long as it's within 0.15 seconds of each other hitting one another, we both will die and no God will be chosen. And the fact that he so perfectly planted it in the minds that militaries, governments, if you're going to be stupid and try to shoot us, just know that one of us will become God. Even if we all end up dying, the last person alive will become God. But the idea of there is an actual way to do it, but no human bullet's going to be able to get it on the money other than this professor. And that's what's so brutal about it, is that I think if you take away emotional response to what he's doing, the idea of not wanting this creature who he firmly believes is a creature and something that we shouldn't have that type of energy out there, I think there's an argument to be made. But at the same time, that level of power, if we've seen any character in this show who might be able to make good out of it, it would be Mirai himself. But the idea that power corrupts is something that's always, it's an interesting idea. You can have the most noble of people who get into politics, but eventually that power and the weight of the world kind of on your shoulders, everyone's going to get corrupted eventually. So it very much could happen to God himself. I mean, the images we've seen of the current active God, he doesn't look all that heroic. He's not a big, powerful man with a bushy beard. He's was on death's doorstep. So you don't quite know what that power would do to someone. So maybe the professor's way, as inhumane as it might seem to give people who are on the urge of death, who now actually want to live, even the most suicidal of kids is wanting to live at this point, to experience wonders like tasty food. It very much is taking that freedom away in that second chance, where Mirai wants to give them that chance, but the professor is fearful of what God will be in the cycle that will continue. And I think both sides have an argument to be made why theirs is better, and I like how rather than just ending this show with another Metropolitan just wanting to kill for that power, he doesn't want the power. He wants no one to have that power. And that's exactly how we should end this show. You couldn't have a character like him as the first antagonist, because then you would transition into a battle royale and the world wouldn't give a shit. It would just be the typical fighting we see currently in our own news cycle. But having it start out as what you typically think would happen, people getting corrupted by that power, using it for pleasure, using it for murder, and then ending it with them not even wanting to fight. It's more of Mirai believes they might have to kill him if nothing's going to go through, because ultimately our happiness does matter, as does 10% of the world, even if 90% don't believe or don't care. And then this professor is just trying to kill everyone so that no one becomes God. And the fact that it's such a well laid out story that there's no plot holes here. The way the powers have worked, the limitations, the testing, had we not had him kill 30, 50 people who were all suicidal, right? The fact of that, then we can make the argument, how is his math perfect? Just because he's smart doesn't prove anything. He tested it in this episode, and it was a brutal test that came to a very simple conclusion, and that math doesn't lie. That is insane to me, and just to build up throughout this episode, just having the world look at them, not knowing what's going to happen, and how casual so many people are. Oh, today's the day, He shoots high up prime ministers and leaders and police, and ultimately wraps the world around his finger for this moment, this one shot. No one knows what is about to happen besides the professor, but the professor also doesn't realize that Mirai has the determination to kill already. If he shoots Saki first, or shoots any of them, that urge to kill is probably just going to amplify at that point. But it is nice to have that I love you scene, because we've known Mirai loves Saki for some time. The red arrow definitely threw a wrench into the equation. Is it the red arrow talking? Is it her? So knowing that Mirai definitely is on board with becoming God and essentially being removed from her forever, the fact that she said it right back, I thought was a nice bow for their character arcs. And given the fact that now we know the professor wants to kill them all, it very much seems like that I love you is definitely going to turn out to be a goodbye. But then again, you never quite know with this show, right? Or even the cute moments with, Metropolitan's best friend here, and how he's trying to explain to his girl why he hasn't been here, and how he's actually in love with someone else, but it's not what you think, it's also with a guy, but just trust me, meet me in the park, I promise you, it's not as crazy as it sounds on the phone. There was definitely some lightheartedness in this pretty heavy episode, all things considered, but I'm glad that we're not rushing, right? It feels like within the end of next episode, we might have a situation where God's chosen or God is killed, and then we do something different for the last couple, but it almost feels to me that no matter what, episode 24 is going to be epilogue, and potentially 22 and 23 will be the resolution of whatever happens. Is God chosen or is God defeated, and how the world responds to that? Because there's definitely an argument to be made, even if the God in their world doesn't answer every prayer. If there is no God to answer prayers going forward, how much worse would their world end up being, given that God does exist and probably did answer a handful of prayers here and there? Or is it going to make world even better? There's two arguments to be made there, and I don't know which direction it will go. Maybe killing God is for the best, or maybe it will send humanity into their doom far sooner. You don't quite know. I mean, either way, I love Platinum End. I think it's a thought-provoking, incredible show. I completely get why people are saying, you're going to love the Professor character. The Professor character is the one I've been interested in hearing your thoughts about the most. Completely get it. He's the most interesting. He's kind of crazy, and the fact that, he goes from talking about how he was just nice to people to avoid interactions to now regretting his interactions because it led to this moment of his quote-unquote best friend was heartbreakingly, savage, as I'd put it. But thoughts and feelings, if you have any theories, especially, because we're getting into the thick of it, and we're almost done this wild ride, so I'd love to hear any thoughts. If you have any, leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new around here. Until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.